Welcome back. 28th Annual Phyllis Schlafly Collegians Summit. Glad you are here. Remember, on our social media channels, you can leave messages. I missed a couple, I'm sorry to say, on that last round, but if you send them there, we'll get to them. You can go to @EagleEdMartin on Twitter, @EdMartin on Parler and Gab, also Facebook, Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, Facebook, Ed Martin Live, and finally the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles YouTube channel, all those places. And after this is done, it'll take us a day or so to process it. We'll put all these videos and conversations up on our social media so you can come and listen again and check them out. Our next guest is a friend of ours. He's been with us a number of times, both at our Collegians events, but also at our Eagle Council. Congressman Louie Gohmert. I mentioned he was a judge before he was in Congress. That was an honest living, I would say. And he represents Texas's 1st District, has been in since 2005, 2000.
That's January 05.
And he's been a hero. He was just saying before we got on, he said, I'm not sure which clip you showed. Sometimes he said they clip him so that he seems a little grumpy. I think it's refreshing to be actually. So, hey, before we get to that, we were talking to our collegians, and many of them, let's say they're 20 years old. They were, they might remember Phyllis Schlafly, maybe. But you knew her for years and came around. Yeah. Do you have any sort of special memories or thoughts of her and knowing her?
Yeah, I mean, she was absolutely amazing. She had the spunk, she had the spirit, she had the just can-do attitude, but she was also brilliant. And you could talk to her about most any subject, and she was quite comfortable. And it didn't matter what, she was on top of what was happening. And I don't know if you ever experienced this, but she could fuss a little bit.
Yes, oh yeah. John, you want to comment on that? Yeah, I think we both experienced that, yeah.
But it was because she cared.
Yeah.
And, the teachers, my mother was a 8th grade English teacher, so she taught me English all my life, but I knew the teachers that cared were not going to let important things go.
Right.
And so we had some great discussions, but in the end, ultimately, she was always encouraging, uplifting. There were a lot of times I came to speak to the collegians, and I would come being very depressed with the battles we'd fought and lost over in the Capitol. And that spirit of hers just lifted all boats. And you could float after being around Phyllis.
Yeah.
From having been so close with her and worked with her so closely for so long. But I consider every contact, all the discussions I ever had with her, the interplay with her, to be a real gift from God, because she was.
Well, she did, and we earlier talked with Burgess Owens, and he's got a little of that joyful warrior.
He does.
You just can't seem to get him down. He's kind of, and Phyllis had that. I think John probably could tell us better that nobody has it all the time, but in general, she knew the power of keep smiling. I remember watching her. If you've ever seen her, if you do a search on our YouTube channel, you'll see videos of her debating and all, and she always was smiling, even when the fur was flying. Congressman Gohmert.
Well, that kind of brings in Rudyard Kipling's old poem. Maybe paraphrasing a little bit, but at the end, if you can keep your head while all those about you are losing theirs, you're probably the reason they're losing theirs.
That's right.
And you get around Phyllis, she kept her head, and people were going nuts around her.
What was that line, John, she used to like to say? The stressed, they asked if she was stressed out, or what was the line?
Well, she would tell the people who comment about President Ronald Reagan that he never seemed to have any stress, even though he had the most powerful job in the world. And people said that, Phyllis Schlafly didn't show stress either. And then somebody said, no, she causes other people to have stress.
She was a carrier.
Exactly. All right, so Congressman Gohmert, one issue you care about is right to life. Your whole career. Where are we on that? Later on in the program, we'll talk with Bridget Van Means, who heads up a big Thrive program that helps women in need. But where are we on that? Young people seem to be more open to being pro-life. That sort of middle-aged group grew up with maybe bad messaging or whatever, they seem to be, I don't know, they're more pro-abortion. But where are we on that debate?
We've made a lot of progress, and we've gone from the late 60s, 70s, where it was all about what I wanted and what I needed and grab for all the gusto. And I don't care what you think, it's more what I want to see happen. And it's not about the child growing, it's about what a mother wants to do with the child. But we have moved beyond that, and people have come to see, and I think it has a lot to do with the progress that medicine has made.
Right.
We know more about an unborn child. We can see into the womb. We can see what's happening, the development. And I think that has really been a huge help. And, we hear so many instances of someone thinking they wanted an abortion, but once they see that child in a sonogram or scan, it changes everything. Once they hear the heartbeat of the child, it's something that no man, no matter how much we identify as women, we're not going to have that kind of experience. So I've been very pleased, and I tell you, and I've mentioned this at the National Right to Life event out on the mall, but back in 1983, my wife gave birth to our first daughter 8 to 10 weeks prematurely, and that was very dangerous back then. Now, they can do so much with such a small child, but they ended up rushing her to the top level neonatal ICU, and my wife, I was torn. She's in the hospital in Tyler, Texas, and she said, go with her baby, do anything you can.
All right.
And I get there, and they had a wonderful neonatologist named Dr. Singh, Tsing, and he took me to her isolette and said, look, her eyes aren't working. She can't see you. She doesn't know you from seeing you, but she knows your voice. She's heard your voice for these number of months. She knows your voice. And so you need to sit there and talk to her. And you need to caress her little face and just talk to her. And so I sat down on the stool, and they said, now you can only stay 2 hours. And then you take a break, and then you come back later. So I sat down, and I was caressing her face and talking to her, and it was a very precious time. And anyway, in the process of playing with her hand, with my finger, she reached up and grabbed the end of my finger with her whole hand and just squeezed and hung on. And I talked to her, and I wasn't about to pull my hand away.
Right.
And eventually Dr. Singh came over, and he said, have you noticed the monitors? Because they've got everything monitored. And I said, no, I've been focused on my daughter. And he said, well, look. And I looked. The things that had been so erratic, the breathing's still very shallow because the lungs weren't very developed, but they were regular. And he said, she's drawing strength from you. And you're providing strength just being here and letting her hold on.
Wow.
I couldn't leave.
Right.
8 hours later, they came and said, Mr. Gohmert, you've got to go take a break. I said, I can't leave my child. She's doing better as long as I'm here.
Right.
But all of that to say, Ed, babies want to live. They want to live. They're hanging on, those little fast breaths. They want to live.
Is your daughter, did she live?
Yes, she did. And she is an incredibly talented artist. She just got her master's in fine art
Wow.
in Europe. And anyway, she's amazing. All three of our daughters are really amazing.
What's her name?
Well, I don't.
You don't want to say her name?
People go after my
Oh,
children.
okay, all right.
They go after my children.
Wow. So she was your firstborn, though. That's
Yeah.
amazing. What a story. Have you written
Yeah.
that story down
Told it, but
a bunch of times?
No,
Because that's an amazing story. Wow.
Yeah,
So when we had the majority,
Yeah.
meaning Trump, the Senate, and the House, pro-lifers feel, looking back, like we didn't do enough.
And the only reason pro-lifers feel that way is because we didn't do enough.
Okay,
We didn't.
good. Okay.
We had, God gave us the opportunity to really make progress, for bringing back goodness and wholesomeness into the United States, and it was squandered. We had internal bickering over, gee, does this go too far? Does this take too much of women's right to choose? We need these exceptions. No, we can't go. Anyway, we squandered the chance to get real good legislation done. And, it's one of those things. We expected to get put back in the majority. We got back in the majority. But you had John Boehner, whose position was, let's don't go overboard on anything. I think he was just so glad to be Speaker. He didn't push the bounds of anything except trying to give people illegally in the country some kind of amnesty. And then we had Paul Ryan, and Paul Ryan's line to us in the Republican conference drove me crazy every time I heard it. Look, guys, remember, when there's no drama, we win. No drama, we win. I finally got up and I said, the Senate is going to save their majority because they just had a bunch of drama in a Senate hearing. Even Lindsey Graham got upset. So they're going to probably save their majority. But unless we stand up and take a stand and accomplish some of the things we were sent here to do, we are not going to win. Well, that was not the majority thinking in the majority. So we did not do, not on pro-life, not on health care, not on the border, the things that we should have done.
Can you just say for 1 second, because our college students are watching, don't know this. I often say there's only one dictator in our political system. That's the Speaker of the House.
That's right.
Once the Speaker of the House is elected, he or she is in charge.
Yeah.
I mean, almost, I guess there could be a overthrow of a speaker, but sort of hard to do, right, procedurally. So they have all the power.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah. Well, we were able to overthrow one speaker. I don't even know if he knows who Machiavelli was, but he used Machiavellian tactics, telling us one thing to try to get us to do something he wanted. But yeah, right now, you mentioned the lawsuit earlier.
Yes, tell us about the lawsuit.
Well, look, after January 6th, we knew that the Democrats were greatly exaggerating what happened. I mean, I was a felony judge. I've sent a lot of people to prison. I've ordered a couple of people killed through the death penalty. And that's very, very sobering. And I don't think it ought to be used very often, but there are cases, and these were two of them. They should have been. But so I don't have problems sending people to prison for committing felonies. And there were definitely people there on January 6th that need to do some hard time. But most of the people there, I mean, their estimates 100,000, 200,000 that came to rally and to peacefully protest. And you had some hooligans there that were intent on creating violence. And those who did commit serious crimes need to do some time. Those who have been charged with doing what the Democrats did in recent years when they took over control of the House floor and committed a crime of potential 20 years in prison, obstructing us trying to have a session of Congress. They took over for about 25 hours, preventing us from going into sessions. And that was an awful lot of Democrats that did that. They violated lots of House rules. Well, they didn't go to prison for obstructing a session of Congress. But the Democrats have pushed, and the federal justice system, they've got people locked up for months now. 23 hours of solitary confinement. And now many of them this past week, after Julie Kelly did a story now they've locked them down for 24 hours a day, so they can't talk to anybody, including Julie. So it's we've seen a tyrannical leader or leadership take place. We know from hearing the Capitol Police Chief say that there is no intelligence from any source that indicates any member of Congress is a threat to another member. And that means there's no reason to have metal detectors right outside the entrances to the House floor, because no member is a threat to any other member. But she decided we would have metal detectors just for members of Congress, because she has said publicly, the enemy is within the House. She thinks Republicans are the enemy. And so because it's a term they like to use, optics, it's the reason the Sergeant at Arms on behalf of the Speaker refused to have any National Guard troops come up on January 6th to help protect the Capitol. If they'd accepted that, it's extremely unlikely anybody would have ever gotten in. But they turned it down because of optics. So the Speaker's got the metal detectors out there. Some of us, we have not accumulated a lot of wealth. I went from the year before I became a judge. I made 3 times more than I did when I got elected to be a judge. But I felt like it was a calling and I needed to do it and did. But it doesn't make you wealthy when you do that. Somebody like Speaker Pelosi that makes millions of dollars, $5,000 is no big deal.
Well, to be clear, that was that you didn't agree to the metal detector. You thought it was wrong, so you went around it.
Well, actually, I did go through the metal detector, and I was screened satisfactorily. I went onto the House floor. I was there an hour or two, and I was going to be speaking. So I went out the speaker's lobby, where there's no metal detector at that time, and into the restroom. And when I came back, they said, "We need to wand you." And I said, "You hadn't been wanding anybody. You saw me go right there. You have checked the restroom. There's not even a tank on the toilet like in The Godfather where you can put a gun. So you guys check it. There's no need." So I go in. So they accused me of not, people saying he didn't go through the metal detector. I went through where it was. Well, in weeks after that, they added metal detectors between the restroom and the floor. Really? Yeah, but it wasn't there. So anyway, there was, even the Sergeant at Arms, I'm told, went to the ethics committee and said, "I don't think Gohmert ought to be fined." But the Democrats, there were 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. The 5 Democrats voted against every Republican's appeal, and except Hal Rogers. He came up at the same time Jim Clyburn did. So obviously the Democrats did a prisoner exchange. All right, we'll let Hal Rogers go so that we can let Jim Clyburn go.
Right.
But the Republicans on the committee have stayed consistent in saying this is unconstitutional. This is not.
So 5 to 5 means you get fined anyway?
That means you get fined. So Andrew Clyde, he's been such a great freshman. He's just superb.
Where's he from?
Georgia, and he has a gun store.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this guy's great. He's just great. But anyway, we filed suit, and the lawyer is Ken Cuccinelli.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Ken.
Former AG in Pennsylvania, and actually was deputy director at Homeland. So anyway, Ken's smart. He's a great lawyer. We have filed suit to stop that from happening, but since then,
Right.
people say, well, you just don't want to go through metal detectors. We go through metal detectors all the time.
Right.
You can't get through an airport without doing it. But in this case, it is a way to beat down and make Republicans subservient.
Right.
Make the members of Congress subservient. In the meantime, there are witnesses that have watched. In fact, on the same day I got fined, Pelosi went around all the metal detectors and went into the House chamber. And we also have video where she didn't go through proper security to get on the House floor. But Andrew Clyde started a website called QueenPelosi.com, and it says, fines for thee, but not for me. But this is unconstitutional. And we've been saying for a while, if she can get away with this and nobody buck her or challenge her, then she'll start other stuff. Well, now this week we're told anybody that comes to see you, you need to provide who they are, their information, and the subject they're going to talk to you
Come
about.
on, really?
Well, she's not entitled to know that.
No.
That's covered speech and debate.
Exactly.
And if somebody wants to come to me and complain about the speaker, she has no right to know who it is and what.
Right.
Wow.
Wow.
And I totally understand being screened to come into the building.
Right.
But this is getting out of hand.
Yeah, it's getting out of hand.
So somebody had to stand up.
And you did file that suit. Okay.
And Andrew and I have.
On YouTube, someone says, thank you for standing up for Louie Gohmert. Thank you for standing up for women and unborn children. Help Americans take back our school system.
Yes.
Kyle on YouTube says, what are some ways we can be our side mindful of the true big picture rather than sometimes just focusing on what's in front of us? One more thing, Jim said on YouTube, such a great story by Congressman Gohmert about his first child. But how about that as we finish up? Well, how can our side, young people, we all get excited about this or that or the other thing, the big picture. You got a few years on me, if not John. And what's the big picture here?
The really big picture.
Yep.
Is we're being moved to socialism at such an incredibly fast pace. It's happening. The Democrats are using energy, weather, anything they can to usurp people's rights. The pandemic has helped speed us along the road to socialism. And I spent a summer in the Soviet Union on an exchange program back when I was at Texas A&M. And I saw socialism back when it was the real deal, and I didn't ever want to get there. We have moved in so many ways to where the Soviet Union was, and we're getting close to losing it all. The biggest picture I can tell you is what Dostoevsky said in the 1800s when he was taking on this crackpot named Marx and Engels, and Dostoevsky and Solzhenitsyn quotes him in Gulag Archipelago. He said, the problem with socialism is not economic. The problem with socialism is atheism. And that's the biggest picture you can get. We are moving to a godless society where you are going to have to do as the Soviets did, pay tribute to dead Lenin or whomever, and that's the biggest picture, and it's dangerous as we move away from being under God to being under tyranny. We have got to stop before we get any further.
All right, Congressman Louie Gohmert represents Texas' 1st congressional district, but is a good voice for a lot of Americans. I know that we'll watch him closely. If you're a college student, you should go YouTube all his speeches. He says that maybe they take the clips and all, but he usually gives gives a good bit to some of these people that come in and try to talk jive in the House committees. So thanks for coming with us and all you do, and thanks for that great story on your family. We'll take a break, everybody. Coming up next.